On behalf of the National Park Service, I'd like to welcome all of you here to Sequoia National Park and to the General Sherman tree. I have to tell you guys, I'm a geologist actually, I'm a speleologist. I study caves, so I'm a little bit out of my element up here on the surface. But I am sort of a history buff, as maybe some of you guys are too, and I found that as long as there's been recorded history, humans have had a habit of giving things and places names, and usually there's a story behind that name. And one of the questions that I get asked most often is, how did the sequoias get their name? Well, they got their name by a man named Stephen Endlicher. He was an Austrian scholar in the 1847. And Sequoia was a Cherokee Indian who developed the alphabet for the Cherokee language. But it's interesting to note that the spelling for Sequoia, the man, is different than for Sequoia, the tree. And there is no written documentation by Endlicher that he named the trees Sequoia after the man Sequoia. But that is the story behind it. And well, long before Endlicher and even before Sequoia, we did have Native Americans living up here. The Miwok Indians called these trees, the sequoias, Wawonas, after the sound that the spotted owl made. And the Wachumni Indians, who also lived up in this area, called these trees Moguchi, which means ancient ones. And for me, it isn't hard to imagine. Sometimes I come here when it's really quiet and nobody's around, and I sit over here. And it isn't hard for me to imagine a Native American walking by this tree 2,200 years ago when this tree was just a sapling. Maybe he was hunting, looking for some deer or something to feed his family. But there were Native Americans living here in this area, and they lived here peacefully until about the 1850s, when white settlers began to arrive. And then the first white settler, his name was Hale Tharp. He would come up here, and he was a cattleman, and he brought his cattle up here to graze in the meadows. If you guys visit Crescent Meadow, you can see Tharp's log. He built a home out of a fallen sequoia, and the house is still there. It's all restored, so it's one of the things that you can see. Crescent Meadows just over on the other side there. But in Tharp's employ was a man named James Wolverton. And during the Civil War, James Wolverton served under William Tecumseh Sherman for the Northern Army, the Union Army. But after the war, Wolverton came out here and settled, and he explored these woods and discovered this tree and named it the General Sherman tree after the general that he served under during the Civil War. But the name didn't really stick. It's interesting to note that the biggest controversy over logging these great trees didn't stem from the logging companies. It stemmed from a small group of people called the Quia colonists. They moved from San Francisco down here to Three Rivers, and they were a utopian society, a socialist society. And they bought claims to the giant forest area here with the intention of logging these trees. And they also discovered this tree, and they named it the Karl Marx tree. So it was kind of in limbo, the Marx tree, the Sherman tree, depending on who you were, until 1890, when Sequoia became a national park. And before the National Park Service, before us, the cavalry used to guard our two national parks at the time. And it was Troop K who guarded this area up here, and they were given the choice to name the tree Marx or Sherman tree. Well, obviously they picked the Sherman tree. And well, today we call this tree, the sequoia tree, Sequoia dendrum giganteum. That's the Latin name, or just giant sequoias. That's easier to remember, I think. And they are giant. They're very big trees. And you would think from such a big tree you would get a huge, gigantic cone. Well, this is the cone from a sugar pine tree, actually. I have too much stuff in my pocket. This is a sequoia cone. This is an average size of a sequoia cone. So size doesn't really matter, because packed in this little cone are about 200 seeds. And the seeds, I can pass this around, they're shaped like a little oatmeal flake, and they're shaped also like a fan, so they catch the wind and they disperse very easily. And for this tree, that seed landed in just the perfect spot. And the reason we know that is because, well, these trees, there was probably a fire in this area. And fire, well, it's the great destroyer, but it also brings life to these trees. These trees need fire to live. So a fire probably burned this area, allowed the cones to drop and the seeds to disperse. But fire also burns away the thick duff and needles on the floor. And it burns away the underbrush, because these trees are sun-loving. They need a lot of sun to grow. And this also was a good area for this tree, because if you look closely on the topography, this area is shaped like a bowl, so this area catches a lot of water. And these trees need a lot of water and a lot of sun to grow. And another deciding factor in the longevity and the size of these trees is the wood and the bark. Both the wood and bark have tannin in it. And tannin gives the tree the red color. It also gives the tree its fire-resistant qualities too. And the bark itself is about 2 to 3 feet thick on the base of this tree and on some of the trees here. So it gives it its insect-resistant quality. All the things that kill a regular tree, insects and fire, these trees have the ability to fight that off. We have beetles. Most of the bugs that attack the trees here are beetles. And a beetle wouldn't take the time to chew through 3 feet of bark just to get to a tannin-flavored wood, which I heard doesn't taste very well. I haven't tried it, but so why would it do that when it can go over here to a fir tree or a cedar tree that has 2 inches of bark and tasty wood, right? So those are some of the things that factor into the longevity and the large size of this tree. And it is large. This one is the largest of our trees. It isn't the tallest of trees. The coastal redwoods are taller, and it isn't the widest of trees. This is 36 feet in diameter. The Thule cypress tree is larger. We have another sequoia here in the park over on the Grant Grove side, the General Grant tree, our nation's Christmas tree. It is 40 feet in diameter. But this tree is the largest in mass. If you hollowed this tree out, it would hold more water than any other tree in the world. That's how we describe it. And it is big. If you took this tree and laid it on its side, it would take up nearly the entire length of an American football field.